Hello again, it's Tom here with Chapter 3 of Gunnerkrigg Court, Reynardine. Now, when I started the comic, aside from having the character designs and the general plot of the comic, I also felt that I wanted an overarching theme or motif that I could use to sort of tie everything together. And we see here some alchemical symbols. On the left is the symbol for lead, which is a very heavy but soft metal. On the right, we have the symbol for mercury, which is a very toxic and fluid. And in the middle, we see antimony with her symbol. And we start off with Annie doing a bit of Mary Foo and flipping Winsbury onto his butt. This might give an indication that Annie has had some sort of training of some kind in the past, but we get back to that later. We also see the introduction of Jimmy Jims Eglamour here, his teacher, who, although he reprimands Annie, he also understands that Winsbury was probably the one that instigated it, and sort of on the sly mentions to Annie that what she did was noble to stand up for a friend. And of course we learn that Kat has a bit of a crush on him. And of course, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that Kat's t-shirt is a reference to Aphex Twin. We also see that Kat understands a little bit about alchemy, and she finds it quaint. As a smart girl that she is, she finds those old sciences interesting, but not really anything to pay too much mind about. So, of course, that night, the alarms go off. Here we see Janet and Path again, and we see this girl here who pops up again. Her name is Becky. Her name is Becky Ground. I don't know who this jerk is, though. Incidentally, this is still one of my favourite pictures of Janet. So, turns out Annie's missing. Just as a point of interest, when I was originally writing this chapter, Reynardine was going to be a bat. The less said about that, the better. So here we go. Here is the reveal of a big old creature on top of the school. And strangely enough, the creature calls Annie by the name Surma, almost as if he recognizes her. But it seems like this creature is confused, and he mentions that she looks just like this Surma person. And here we see the Dragon Slayer watching from afar with the lead symbol on his chest. And Annie is interested in how he knows the name Surma, but Reynardine avoids the subject and changes the topic. And Annie faints just in time to end the scene. And we see that the Dragon Slayer is Mr. Eglamour, who was the games teacher shown earlier. So Annie wakes up and is resolute to try and find this Reynardine creature, because we find out here that Surma is the name of her mother. Incidentally, Surma is one name given to the element stibnite, from which antimony is an element that is derived from. So she heads off, shows that she's a bit wily. She carries some lockpicks in her stuffed toy there, and we see another TikTok, just showing that this is a very strange area. We also find that there's a secret train that is leading exactly to where Annie wants to go. So apparently the court just happens to have a giant maglev. And Annie notices for the first time that she doesn't see that many people in the court, despite the court being such a large, vast area. And here we go, she comes across the holding cells, where we find Reynardine again, disabled by Eglamour. And it's obvious that these two have a bit of a history between themselves. So Annie comes in, and this leads to one of the long-running discussion points throughout the comic, whereby Reynardine comes out of his body, looking like a different creature, and he's about to take Antimony's body. Or is he? Because Eglamour comes along, pushes her out the way, and Reynardine zaps into her toy and hides. And here Eglamour explains that Reynardine was actually a creature called Sivo that was a friend of his, and was taken over by this spirit, or demon as he calls it, called Reynardine. And he seems to think that Reynardine is gone now, since he had nobody to jump into. Here at the end, Eglamour just says, "Goodbye, my friend," in Slovenian. I had a friend translate that for me. I'm not going to try and pronounce that. So here at the end of the chapter, we just have Annie contemplating over things that happened, and the question is raised, will Reynardine come back? And the answer is yes. Yes, he will. He comes back later. And on this bonus page, I made up a world explorer called Sir Eugene Gould, who I guess would be an expert in cryptozoological creatures and stuff like that. And it was just a way of giving a bit of an info dump on what these Orjaks were without having to make the main characters explain that in the story. It was just something a bit extra to read between chapters. And that's it. That's chapter 3. Come back again for chapter 4. Not very scary.